K-Man Daily Weather is presented by Fox Business Systems. How much does downtime cost you and your business? Don't let another second go by. Call Fox Business Systems at 776-1452.
Your News Radio, KMAN Manhattan area forecast is calling for steady temperatures throughout the day today, then partly cloudy 11 overnight. Partly sunny 35 tomorrow. Chance of rain and snow developing tomorrow evening. That becomes just a chance of snow ahead of midnight with clouds, a low of 25. Sunshine 34 on Sunday. Chilly 7 on Sunday night under a partly cloudy sky. 24 Monday. Back to the low 30s for Tuesday.
Digging deeper into the conversations, trends, and ideas impacting Manhattan and the Flint Hills. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
Every system, whether it is a nonprofit, a Main Street mom-and-pop business, or a government agency, has some component of their work that deals with money. Whether by title or necessity, the person who often does that work is called the CFO, or the Chief Financial Officer. They track the cash flow, they receive and deposit money, they manage investments, they keep track of surpluses and deficits. In the state government of Kansas, that individual is your state treasurer, and you elect someone to handle those responsibilities. A couple of years ago, you elected Republican Stephen Johnson of Saline County to that office. He will be our guest today on Within Reason. We'll find out what he does for you. We'll also find out a little bit about the work that he did before he entered the office of state treasurer. He was in a state legislature and was a leader in a conversation related to civil discourse. Within Reason is presented by Stormont Vale Health, McCown Gordon Construction, and the Trust Company. We're live on News Radio KMAN. We are live streaming on YouTube. You can go to that website, search News Radio KMAN, and we're also being recorded and will be posted as a podcast on the KMAN website and made available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Mike Matson. I'm a former journalist, a one-time political operative and lobbyist. Today I write an opinion column for the Manhattan Mercury. I've written a couple of books, and I am your host for Within Reason. This talk show / podcast designed specifically as a tool to foster critical thinking in our region by engaging in conversation with individuals involved in community, regional, statewide conversations and issues. Kansas State Treasurer Stephen Johnson joins us today. He is on the phone. He is in his office of the State Treasurer across the street from the State House in Topeka. Stephen, welcome to Within Reason.
Great to be with you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Give us a sense of what it looks like in Topeka today. We got a little bit more snow here in Manhattan. You guys were still digging out over there.
It is nice and white, so starting to see a few of the sidewalks reappear, but we got a good blanket of snow overnight, probably stopped somewhere in the 10 o'clock range, so the roads weren't terrible this morning, but it's been pretty slick.
We're gonna ask you a couple of basic questions, and we're going to assume that people don't know who you are, so we'll ask you first to talk about Stephen Johnson. Give us a sense of your life and your career.
Well, I'm always glad to get to talk about yourself, so thanks for that. I grew up in central Kansas, just south of Salina. That is home on a farm there. Still have a chance to operate that with my nephew. My brother also operates the livestock side of it, and that is home, and where you learn a lot of the basics of how you approach business and decision-making, which is particularly useful from there. And anyway, went to K-State, worked in the financial services industry, worked in the legislature, and had the chance to run for treasurer a couple of years ago. So I've really enjoyed having the chance to hold this office. And you mentioned it is an elected position, but I'll bet even among those who voted for treasurer, several wouldn't even know who they voted for.
You know, I would suspect that is probably true. So we'll talk about statewide offices and those who aspire to that here in a little bit, but give us a sense of what exactly the state treasurer of Kansas does.
Well, it is handling the money for the state at a high level. And as you said, somewhere that has to happen. So our function has various items related to that. So we don't do the collections. The Department of Revenue picks it up, and then we get it once they have those funds from taxes and any other receipts that come into the state. We manage that and make sure that we have the money to pay the bills and do the process of paying those bills and make sure the books balance at each point in time. And then we have some other programs. We handle the unclaimed property for the state. We have several savings programs to help Kansans on various items. And then we have tried to branch beyond just the savings programs to see where can we partner with entities across the state on financial literacy.
If you were to sit down today and design sort of a financial system for the state government of Kansas, the chances are you would not have this sort of bifurcated component that you discussed with respect to the Revenue Department collection and the state treasurer's office with respect to the investments and the money managing. Yet that traces all the way back to the conversations around statehood, I would suspect.
Many, and from statehood forward, there have continued to be some changes in that. So it isn't quite as clean a process as I might design if I were setting it up for a company. Checks and balances are necessarily more critical in handling public funds and making sure that that fiduciary responsibility is there. I'm not sure. I actually think it may make sense to have a different entity collecting funds and a different one that holds and pays the bills.
Well,
that dual piece, I think, may make sense.
And the fact that your office is one that is elected, right, that just adds a layer of accountability that may not otherwise be there.
Correct. The others roll up to the governor, and then we work with the budget director who works with the governor and the legislature. They determine the policy. They determine who is going to get the money and how much. Then we execute actually making that happen.
So our guest is Stephen Johnson. He is the Kansas State Treasurer. He has actually been on the job 2 years and 1 day. Is it everything it's cracked up to be that you hoped it would be?
You know, I have really enjoyed this position, and I found it was a little more than I expected. The first thing that shocked me was the speed with which we could move on the executive side. Understandably, the legislative process needs to be very thoughtful, and a number of processes to make sure that any changes made are vetted and considered. So it is slow to make change there.
Before
in the corporate world, it can be slow.
Yeah, fair enough. Before he ran for state treasurer and was elected, Stephen Johnson was a leader in the Kansas legislature and was deeply involved in taxation policy. And we'll get to those ideas here in a little bit. But let's continue to talk, Stephen, just about this, the duties and responsibilities of the state treasurer. You touched on unclaimed property. People that are marginally familiar, every now and then you'll hear that, right? What does that mean?
So we get items that cannot be returned to the owner by whoever holds them. There may be life insurance proceeds. It could be the last paycheck. It could be a utility deposit when a student was at K-State and moved away. So all of those, the entity isn't able to balance their books. To balance their books, they're required to remit that after a period of time to the state, and we hold that for the benefit of the owner.
And then at some point, you try to track them down and give them that money.
Well, we try to make it easy for people to search. It's not always super easy to claim because we have to defend the interest of any possible heirs. So as it gets down a generation or two, it does get tougher. But if it is the owner, it's pretty easy to go on, look, see if some of the $600 million we have is yours. I have a list of some of the top holdings we have in the Manhattan area that I'd be glad to go over. There are several entities with more than $10,000 that we would love to write a check for. We had $9,000 for the K-State Foundation. How does an entity not find the K-State Foundation? But it was fun to give them a check in December.
Well, we'll have Greg Willem on this show actually a week from today. He's the head honcho of the K-State Foundation. He is scheduled, so we will ask him that question. How come he didn't pick up the $9K, and how is he going to spend it?
It's not their fault. It is some entity that claimed they couldn't find the K-State Foundation for years.
Fair enough.
Instead sent it to the treasurer. And so then they did find it, and we were able to return it to them.
Fair enough. Stephen Johnson is our guest. He is the Kansas State Treasurer. You elected him to that position 2 years ago. He'll be up for re-election here in 2026. Last question about the duties of the State Treasurer, and then we'll get into a little bit more about Stephen Johnson, the human being. Stephen, give us a sense of the work that you do in that office related to financial literacy and money management and just helping consumers know more about finances.
So the money management is day-to-day of the state assets, about $9 billion currently in cash and other assets that we manage. Some other programs that go along, savings programs, the 529 for education, the 529 ABLE program for those with a disability. Great tools to help with financial planning, with tax benefits. And then we have tried to see, are there ways we can partner with others to increase awareness of opportunities and issues? We did a program with Women in Money in October, our first one. We had great sponsors and partners that really made that work. We're just starting to plan one in Wichita for the first week of November. And the banks have been a good partner. Fraud is an issue, and they've done some PSAs on issues that people may have with their accounts and fraudsters trying to attack those. So it's a good opportunity to work with entities that have that knowledge and try and get that to consumers.
Stephen Johnson was born and raised on a cattle and grain farm near Assaria in Saline County, Kansas. After graduating from southeast of Saline High, Stephen went on to study agriculture economics here in Manhattan at K-State, where he was elected student body president, graduated with honors. We'll have more with State Treasurer Stephen Johnson as Within Reason continues on News Radio KMAN.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
At Stormont Vale Health, high-quality care is right around the corner.
Stormont Vale Health is more than just a hospital. We're an essential part of your community. Our commitment to quality health care means investing in the most skilled and talented providers and cutting-edge medical technology. Our investment in your well-being doesn't stop there. We also support various nonprofit programs throughout the communities we serve. Visit StormontVale.org and discover how we can serve you.
Stormont Vale Health, high-quality care, closer to home.
No matter if your flight is departing or arriving, travel is more convenient when you fly local with Manhattan Regional Airport. Connect to anywhere in the world with 5 daily flights to Dallas and Chicago. Plus, by booking your next flight through Manhattan Regional Airport, you'll spend less time driving, saving you both gas and time. Why spend hours on the road when you can spend more time at your destination? Or more importantly, getting home quicker to the ones you love. Get back to the convenience of flying local with Manhattan Regional Airport. Click your next flight at flymhk.com.
The word father means a lot to me. Being that support system for them, and as a man, that's important in a child's life. I think men can be a little stubborn sometimes where they may want the help, they may not know how to ask. It's hard for a man to speak his emotions. Those tears, they mean something. In a Arapaho way, tears are water and water is life. And when you shed those tears, that's love. That's real love. Sometimes as dads, I think we're too hard on ourselves. Life can come at you really quick, and it can be really tough at times. But then you put that one foot in front of the other, and you keep doing the right thing. Slowly that voice goes away, you know. Arapaho way, you gotta pray for yourself, as well as for everybody else, but never forget yourself.
Never stop being a dad. That's dedication. Find out more at fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
The Ramsey Show.
Up to 50% of American families are paying their adult children's bills to an average of $1,482 a month. Wow. I've never seen it like this. 25% of millennials, their parents are paying their house payment, their rent, or they're living in their basement. You pay your kids' bills. Psychologists call that enabling. As a matter of fact, enabling is quite the opposite of loving.
Go from paycheck to purpose with The Ramsey Show. Weekdays 10 to 1 on News Radio KMAN. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
The state treasurer serves as sort of the chief custodian of the state's treasury. Good way to think about it is the state's lead banker. Stephen Johnson is yours. He began his career in the financial services sector while remaining involved in the family farm in Saline County. He joins us now from Topeka. Stephen, tell us about the family farm.
Well, as many know, it's a great way to grow up, and it has been fun to continue. So, Dad, after he got through K-State and great experience with the judging team, and it was always fun to see the other members of the 54 judging team come by for various things. But livestock was the main thing. Then there were some grain operations. That's what I continued to focus on, in that you got to show up every day for livestock. and I could get by doing some other things and farming a little bit of wheat. And then I took a little more active role when my parents passed away and moved back there as my primary residence in 2008 and operated it for several years. And then when I began as treasurer, my nephew was thankfully able to take over and is the operator, and it has been fun to see him continue to engage new technology, to work with resources at K-State, looking at, some probes that give us a good sense for root development, water use at various levels, way above the metal probe that I just stick in to look at what some water is and occasionally get a few.
If you think about Assyria, right, the nearest community to where you grow, I think most people in Kansas, when they think about Assyria, will think about the sign on the interstate. If you lived in Assyria, you'd be home now. You can say that and be honest about it.
Yep, that is true. Well, and I do. So that's the turnoff that I jump onto to head a couple miles on past this area and stop at the farm and get my car good and dirty.
There you go.
So that I can wash it to come back to Topeka.
So like a lot of people in your generation in Kansas, you matriculated to Manhattan, and where you wanted to go to school, Alpha Gamma Rho Farmhouse. Where'd you land when you got here?
Happened to be at Farmhouse when I got there. So that was a good experience. A lot of great students at K-State. The student government experience was great. The Ag Council leaders, the Ag Econ department, and I was in the choir, and I enjoy connecting with those friends as well when I can.
So Stephen Johnson is our guest. He is the Kansas State Treasurer. Before he was elected to that statewide office, he served as a state legislator from his home area in Saline County. While you're at K-State, you were a student body president, Stephen. So clearly this notion of politics and public service probably struck you at an early age, it sounds like.
Yes, it was something that I thought about, and I appreciated the chance after that to do an internship with Senator Dole when he was majority leader and saw a little bit of what went on there. I won't pretend to understand it, but I had the introduction to it and had always appreciated what could be done in leadership and government.
At what point did you decide that you wanted to run for the state legislature?
So I moved back in 2008, and in 2010, one of the Republican folks in Saline County caught me at the Fair Board meeting and said, we think you ought to give it a run. And at that point, it was after the big economic downturn of 2008-09, and our pension system was in, I won't say a nosedive, but a bit of a challenge in terms of the contributions that were being made were not going to meet the future liability for some time.
This would be capers?
Capers, correct. And it was the biggest liability that we had, and that was the type of problem that I had worked with on a much smaller scale, helping people plan for retirement. And the good news is those equations are actually fairly simple. You've got dollars in, dollars out, and what you earn along the way. And the equation's balanced. So it's just working the math from there. So I ran and had the opportunity to be elected there in Saline, Ellsworth, and then changed a little bit between McPherson and Dickinson counties and what was in the district, but got a chance to work on the financial issues in the legislature.
If you are a regular listener to our program, we've been on the air since the middle of October, and we have been purposeful about trying to invite our statewide elected officers on this show. Our debut guest was Governor Laura Kelly. She was kind enough to make the trip to Topeka here to Manhattan to visit with us on our show. Since that time, we have visited with Secretary of State Scott Schwab, who made an announcement yesterday that we'll talk about here in a little bit. We've also had Insurance Commissioner Vicki Schmidt on, and we have standing invitations out to Attorney General Chris Kobach and to Lieutenant Governor David Toland as well. We think it's important for people to recognize that there are these statewide offices that they vote for, but probably don't think much about, right? Only when the elections roll around. Stephen Johnson serves as your Kansas State Treasurer. In essence, he is the state's CFO. He has a life story that is pretty typical from a lot of individuals in his generation. Made the decision to serve and run for the state legislature, and from there looked at the Kansas state treasurer position. So you were a leader, Stephen, in the legislature. You chaired the tax committee, right? You were involved with the appropriations committee. You were clearly a player when it came to trying to help move state public policy at the legislative level. What is it about that work that said, well, maybe I'm done with this and I want to think about running for statewide office?
Well, I think there's a value to having some turnover in the leadership that exists, and that there are opportunities for others to hold office as well. I don't know exactly what that time is, but a few things came together as we went through the process, and Jake LaTurner had moved on to Congress. As several of us eyed that seat, I was one then that looked at applying the talent on the treasurer's office, and in particular, I had worked with the Capers board in the legislature quite a bit and trying to figure out, okay, what's your part in running the investment? What's our part in determining benefits and contributions? And how do we make sure that that balances? So the treasurer is involved with that, as well as the other entities that manage money. That is what I had spent my career outside of Kansas doing. And I underestimated how much I would enjoy being able to focus on that part of doing that in service to the state.
When you think about the work that you're doing at the state treasurer's office, and you've touched on it with respect to your life experience professionally, not only on the farm, just in terms of managing and running a day-to-day business, but your work in the financial industry as well, it's almost as if you could say, here, I'm not running for this office because I seek aspiration to a higher office. I'm running for this office because I have experience and I think I can do the job. Is that the way you approached it?
That's correct, and that's the way I'm lucky to get to approach it here. There are a bunch of other folks that are really talented, but it's been really helpful as we look at each of our money management questions to go deep on the portfolios and go deep on exactly what are the expenses in the various options that are there, how that best serves the state, where to take risk. One of the opportunities when I got in office, I noted the amount that was in the checking account, which was a little high on that day. But I go, how much do we need in checking? And we didn't happen to have a sweep account. Not that we necessarily had to have one, but we set one up. And at that time, we were able to get a higher rate on our sweep account than our best overnight investment. So we actually used it pretty heavily. But it continues to serve us well just to have that means of handling cash. So looked up this morning the impact that it had, and I enjoy doing that and then measuring what the impact is.
It is an autonomous office, the Office of State Treasurer. You don't report to anyone except for the voters who elected you to that office. But give us a sense of how you work and collaborate with others involved in state government that have similar responsibilities. For instance, the governor's revenue secretary.
Yeah, so the revenue secretary, the main thing we do is refer the questions that come into our office to them when people have a question about their tags or other things that they're used to working with their county treasurer on, and that actually is handled by the Secretary of Revenue. With that, our interaction is mostly electronic, where those funds wind up on for us to handle. We work with some degree with the budget director, who's been a good partner, just to have a good handle on what's going on. They work with our pooled money director, who's also very talented, and our team to determine what our cash flow needs, exactly when do we have to have assets liquid and how much, and building the portfolio around each of those things. Then with the legislature, it's whatever policies they are working with. This year, they'll be working with the bankers on some changes. And one of the things they're looking at is a collateral pool to make it more efficient for banks and local governments to invest their money and have it safely covered with collateral. There's some inefficiencies with the system we have now, and I think this is a good idea to get to a better place for both the state and the banks.
Civil discourse is defined as engagement in conversation to enhance understanding. When he was in the state legislature, Kansas State Treasurer Stephen Johnson helped lead an effort to bring more of it. We'll find out more about that as our conversation with State Treasurer Stephen Johnson continues here on Within Reason. The Trust Company is an independent, locally owned wealth management and investment company founded right here in Manhattan in 1992. The motivation that drives your financial goals, your life, is unique to you and your family. You won't find boilerplate, template-driven, off-the-shelf financial services and strategies at the Trust Company, but plans that are thoroughly, thoughtfully, and individually designed, tailored specifically to your hopes and dreams. The Trust Company, locally owned, client-focused. Their only allegiance is to you. Visit thetrustco.com.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
Can you help me access my work computer now that I'm working from home?
We can do that. Is it possible for you to troubleshoot my computer without me coming into your store? We can do that.
I'm getting messages that my password's been compromised by hackers.
We can.
And that I have malware installed.
We can.
I don't even go to the mall.
We can do all of that.
Fox Business Systems business level support. We can do that.
Call 776-1452 or stop by 531 Fort Riley Boulevard. WeBuildSolutions.com.
For over 20 years, Aaron Watson has traveled the land as country music's ultimate underdog troubadour, a truly independent artist with the spirit of the American frontier in his veins. Working without corporate backers, he's reached the top 10 on Billboard's country album chart 5 separate times. See country music icon Aaron Watson at Kansas State's McCain Auditorium Wednesday, January 29th. Buy tickets by phone at the box office or at mccain.kstate.edu.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad, just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
All the way to the goal in the throwdown.
Man.
He's open for three. Yes! Yes!
A Wildcat.
3 seconds to go. Scoop shot. Yes! And the buzzer.
Be a part of the Wildcat voyage right here.
Now goes back in. There's the lob and the throwdown.
On your home for Kansas State Wildcat basketball. The Cats play here. 1350 AM, 93.3 and 93.7 FM. This is News Radio KMAN. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
Stephen Johnson was elected the state's 42nd state treasurer in 2022. He assumed office 2 years and 1 day ago. Before that, he served in the Kansas legislature representing his area of rural Saline County, parts of Ellsworth County, parts of McPherson County, where he chaired the Insurance Committee and the Tax Committee, served on appropriations. He was as plugged in as any state policymaker was, as can be, in the legislative branch of government. During your time in the legislature, Stephen, you were purposeful about helping to design and start this notion of civil discourse. You reached across the aisle. Help us understand what was involved with that.
Well, we were looking at how do we achieve common goals, and to do that, it wasn't necessarily about identifying the goal, but it was about identifying a forum in which communication could be healthy, and that was the desire. And there were some models nationally that we were able to look toward. During the period, we lost a few of our national leaders, and when we do that, just as we saw yesterday, we see a lot of people come together and celebrate the service that leaders have provided and the sacrifice that they've provided for the country. And those moments were encouraging. And a couple of us talked about, are there ways that we could make that moment last? Are there things we could learn from it? And then we looked to some folks who brought that. The Kansas Chamber brought Arthur Brooks in to speak at one of the annual chamber dinners. And he has a book, Love Your Enemies, if you want to learn more about Arthur Brooks. But one of his points is that we need to get better in our discourse at the art of disagreeing well. In that, if you and I agree on everything, we kind of reach a happy plateau of what we're able to achieve. But it's when somebody kind of rocks our world and disagrees with us or shows us a different way that we have that opportunity to potentially grow to a better place. We also have the opportunity to grow to a worse place. So not all change is progress. But for that change, there can be an element of disagreement that introduces that change or the need for it. So it was the goal of trying to figure that out. And then sought some national resources that had forged that path and made the effort to make them available to us in Kansas.
Our guest is Stephen Johnson. He is the state treasurer. He used to be in the state legislature where he helped lead an effort related to civil discourse, this notion of helping to find new tools, new skills, new ability to get past disagreement. I'll make an assumption, Stephen, that was driven by just sort of the lay of the land and the environment in which you found yourself working. Has it changed significantly in your experience?
I would say not a lot. I think it is fairly similar, and it's hard to know. There has been disagreement and issues all the way back, thinking of what President Lincoln dealt with years ago. My goodness, it has been tough. But it can be exciting when we can identify a common goal. And how can we make sure that our rhetoric doesn't get in the way of that if there is that common goal?
Well, and
we can achieve those pretty efficiently.
Absolutely. I mean, and when you just, if you're a consumer of Kansas news and you follow the state legislature and you look at what has happened over there in the last 10, 15 years, we are sort of following some national trends with respect to just the way we talk to each other. And even here in Manhattan, if your former colleagues, Tom Phillips and Mike Dodson, will tell you quietly that one of the reasons each of them decided not to seek re-election was just because of some of the challenges that you are describing and some of the things that you had tried to help make better. Is that an ebb and flow sort of thing? Do you think we're gonna come out of that and get back to a situation and a circumstance where compromise will sort of be the order of the day?
So I don't know. And the good or bad news is that we get to decide. As we continue that, as we cast our votes, we can determine, is that a good thing, or are there other things that I'm looking for from my leaders? So I don't know. Given that my ignorance of exactly what things were like when I was even involved in Senator Dole's office, I don't know that I have a good picture of how that has changed over time. I think most of us think it has gotten worse. I don't know if I have a way to truly measure that or even what worse is necessarily.
You are a Republican. You have run as a Republican. You clearly don't run from that. When you think of the Republican Party today, when someone like me asks you to describe the Republican Party, how would you respond?
So I think both parties are pretty diverse, and I think in the end we both seek to be a big tent. I would still say that the focus of the Republican Party that I would like to be one of our hallmarks is just the fiscal responsibility side, and very much the more conservative choices on how we would choose to manage fiscally. And that is one of the keys that I would continue to like to put forward for the party.
Our guest
each person has a slightly different vision.
Fair enough. Our guest is Stephen Johnson. He is the Kansas State Treasurer. Now let's talk a little bit about Stephen Johnson, the politician. Just yesterday, your former state legislative colleague, Scott Schwab, who is today your fellow state office holder, Secretary of State, announced that he is running for governor. Now, I want you to bear with me. Stephen, I'm going to give you some names. Jake LaTurner, these are your predecessors as state treasurer. Jake LaTurner ran and was elected to the U.S. House. Ron Estes ran and was elected to the U.S. House. Lynn Jenkins ran and was elected to the U.S. House. I detect a trend. Tim Schallenberger ran for governor in 2002. Sally Thompson ran for the U.S. Senate. Joan Finney was elected 4 times to the office that you hold and was elected governor in 1990. So there's a case to be made that when state treasurers get up in the morning and look in the mirror, they're looking at the next governor or the next congressman. Is that the way you're thinking at this point?
Well, that will be up to voters over time. Right now, I am focused on the office of treasurer. I think we have some great opportunities to continue to serve right here, and that is the focus that I have for the current time. If there's another great treasurer to run and an opportunity for me to serve somewhere else, I'll be glad to listen to folks. I find that good leaders across the state are good at helping us identify who the best candidates are. I don't always find candidates as being the best at identifying who the best candidates are.
I can imagine that would be true. So one of the reasons Stephen is with us on the phone today in Topeka is that he's got a 10 o'clock appointment, and I think it relates to foster care. Give us a sense of where you're headed next.
It does. So the Department of Children and Families has had a very good idea. One of the things we work on are ABLE accounts for those with disabilities, and they are looking at using some of those federal funds that come in and placing them in an ABLE account for foster children where they qualify for, so not all foster children qualify, but where they have a qualifying disability, we would seek to capture those funds and actually build some assets for them rather than having them continue to necessarily flow through their fingers so that they never have more than $2,000 and don't lose their federal benefits. The ABLE account is able to do that, and I think that was some really good thinking that they had to look at a way that we could employ those accounts to not only help those foster children today, but really help them to plan for the future and give them more opportunities.
It's no secret that the foster care system in Kansas has had some challenges in recent years, so it's nice to hear that there's some movement in that direction. Last question for our guest, State Treasurer Stephen Johnson. It hadn't been that long ago, Stephen, that our politics sort of worked. You worked for Senator Dole. He was a leader at kind of finding the middle ground. You've seen the harm that dysfunction can bring to the public service arena, and rather than wring your hands and complain about it, you took some steps to address it when you were in the legislature with the civil discourse work. Will we ever return to an era of cooperation and compromise where that will be what we lead with?
So it's up to each of us on that, and I think it's possible. There are some groups that I'm optimistic for. K-State Extension has a master facilitator program. They are something that offers resources, information, and has not gotten mired in the divisive politics nature. So I think there are areas where that can happen. If people are interested, there are great stories that can be motivating in groups that you can support to help. There's a great story if you Google An Unlikely Friendship of Bob and Donna. They are two diametrically opposed people that chose to have a dialogue. And it's just a model that if they can create it, any of us can. So it's an option, but it's a choice.
It can happen, but you have to take that active step. You have to have the next thought. Stephen Johnson has been our guest. Stephen, we appreciate your willingness to take time out of what we're confident is a busy schedule. We appreciate your service to the state of Kansas, and we look forward to having you on. When you get to Manhattan, let us know. We'll get you in the studio.
I'll look forward to that, and thanks to you and to everyone listening.
We appreciate it. Thanks again. Just when you think it is safe to venture out on city streets again after a blizzard and record snowfall, Mother Nature dumps some more snow on us. It's been a busy week for city street crews in Manhattan. After the break, we'll hear from Mayor Susan Adamchak. She'll join us on the phone, and we'll get a sense of the snowstorm aftermath to allow you easier way to get from point A to point B. Within Reason continues. Stick with us here on News Radio KMAN.
This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio, KMAN.
At Stormont Vale Health, high-quality care is right around the corner.
Stormont Vale is more than just a health system. We're your neighbors, dedicated to supporting the well-being of our community and the Flint Hills region. With our strong partnerships, including collaborations with the Mayo Clinic Care Network, other healthcare providers, and various community organizations, we're committed to offering personalized, high-quality care when and where you need it most.
Stormont Vale Health, high-quality care closer to home.
Life is full of great pairings. I mean, what's a bow without an arrow? Homes without Watson. Here at Sugar Creek Country Store, just down the road in St. Mary's, our fresh-made deli sandwiches are fantastic on their own. But pair them up with one of our signature sides like the Amish coleslaw, bacon maple potato salad, or zesty bow tie pasta salad. Stop in and pair them up at Sugar Creek Country Store, just down the road in St. Mary's.
You'll always find a smile at Sugar Creek.
Kids across America are going to school hungry. Millions of kids every day. Hungry kids get sick more often and can struggle in school. It can be harder for them to focus and learn. But one simple thing can help change all of this for a hungry child in America. Good healthy food and the energy it brings. With help from caring people across America, No Kid Hungry is providing healthy meals and hope to hungry kids so they can build better futures.
We want to ensure that all of our kids have healthy meals every day.
Thank you.
Thank you for helping feed our kids.
To learn more about ending child hunger in America, go to helpnokidhungry.org today.
It's the best sports conversations. The Dan Patrick Show.
Is it good for college football to have Notre Dame back there? If I have 4 teams that have a chance to play for the national championship, why is this bad for college football? It doesn't dilute the regular season. You want to see a regular season diluted? Watch college basketball. Oh, we love March Madness, right? Yeah. But the rest of the season, nobody cares about.
The Dan Patrick Show, 1 to 4 weekdays on News Radio KMAN. KMAN's Morning News, tomorrow morning 6 to 9. This is Within Reason with Mike Matson on News Radio KMAN.
So everybody complains about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. Once the weather hits, though, there are a lot of human resources that are brought to bear to deal with its aftermath. We are joined now on the phone by Manhattan Mayor Susan Adamchak. Mayor, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We'll talk about the city response, but first, let's tell us about your personal experience. Were you stuck behind a snowdrift for a while?
This is one of the things I love about Manhattan. I live on a small hill cul-de-sac, and my neighbors were out there with snow blowers and a little side-by-side with a blade on it, and our neighborhood cleared our street. One of the men was going house to house, clearing out driveways. Another guy was plowing the street, and we had a passable lane. I'm in one of those lower priority residential areas, and so I don't think we actually got a plow until Wednesday or Thursday, but we were able to get out of our street.
You don't expect, you count on snow in January, right? That's what happens in Kansas. But a record-setting snowfall on the heels of a blizzard made for some challenges for the city. So give us a sense of what it looked like when the city actually knew this was going to be a problem, and then how you planned to get those streets open again.
Well, crews were called in early to start treating the roads on Friday before the snow even fell. And they were in on Saturday morning, and they were out in their trucks. At one point, and Saturday morning visibility was so bad that the crews did have to pause for a while till things cleared up a bit. But they were back out there. So since Saturday at 10 in the morning, we've been running 12-hour shifts, 24 hours a day. So over 120 hours of continuous snow removal as of yesterday afternoon. And that involves more than 100 individuals across our whole organization.
Well, I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead, Mayor, please.
I was just going to say, people you don't necessarily think of. In addition to the road crews, Parks and Rec were out, clearing sidewalks, trying to get some of the rec facilities accessible. So, and then of course, people directing the services. We borrowed radios from the emergency services, so the crews were able to communicate with each other. And overall, I think the process went pretty well.
We are visiting with Mayor Susan Adamchak, the mayor of Manhattan, Kansas, just about the aftermath of the storm and how the city dealt with it. It clearly, when people don't get up in the morning thinking about their city government until they need to, right? Until they need to be able to get out of their home, onto the street, get to work, get to wherever they need to go. And so at that point, you have people thinking about your services in a way that perhaps they don't. So from that perspective, it's clear that you want to be able to succeed in this work. I assume that's just as baked into the equation.
Of course, and certainly safety is paramount. And I really want to thank, we're lucky in a way that the storm took place over the weekend, because people did have a little bit more liberty to stay home, to stay off the road, give our crews the space to do their work. Many people will know I'm not a social media user, but I did see a number of Facebook posts, hundreds, literally, of people congratulating the city and being thankful, in contrast to fewer than I could count on one hand of people complaining.
And that in itself, right, is a victory when you think about just the cesspool that social media often becomes today when it comes to circumstances such as this. So give us a sense of the magnitude of the way that the city crews viewed this problem compared to just your typical garden variety Kansas January snowstorm.
Well, Brian Johnson, our city engineer, actually provided me with some really good visuals. The crews plowed over 500 lane miles. So think about that. That's a 12-foot lane from here to Denver. So that's the amount of streets that were the distance that we covered. Most of the city had about 16 inches of snow. That's over 42 million cubic feet. So that would be enough to fill Bill Snyder Family Stadium to be over 400 feet deep. Or if you wanted to just move that snow away, put it on 12,500 train cars.
It's a great analogy, right? And when you think about just the magnitude of the snow, I happened to be out and about yesterday, and I saw the crews working on points, right? And these are major construction pieces of equipment that were hauling significant amounts of snow, but there's so much snow, you can't just dump it on the side of the road, so there's a whole nother logistical component that has to be dealt with in terms of where you put this stuff.
Exactly, and as of noon yesterday, we had hauled 500 loads, those dump trucks you saw, of snow. That's over 600 tons just from Aggieville and downtown. So you may see piles of snow in City Park. I'm not sure. I think some may have gone down to Hunter's Island. I'm not positive about that. Saw a truck heading in that direction. I went past the football stadium earlier this week, and I don't know if that was our snow as well as K-State, but there's some pretty big piles there also.
Just look for the purple stripes. That'll be a dead giveaway.
Good one. Yeah.
And so we're visiting with Mayor Susan Adamchak, the mayor of Manhattan, and we're talking with her about the response that the city has been involved with the blizzard and the snowstorm. Got another inch or so last night. Is that going to cause any wrinkles or headaches today?
The crews were out yesterday treating the roads because with the ever so slightly warmer weather, they were concerned about snow melt and then freezing. I would advise people, again, if you can possibly work from home, give the crews the room they need to do their work. I personally had an appointment over in Junction City later this morning. I'm going to attend that meeting via Zoom. so that I don't have to have my car out on the road.
Give us a sense, Mayor, of the individuals that are involved in this work. There clearly is a public works agency. You'd mentioned Parks and Rec. I suspect at this point it's sort of all hands on deck. What's it look like for them just in terms of their workload?
Well, this is certainly taking a priority over what would be more routine tasks. There have been several contractors involved. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure who all. I did see a number of Midwest concrete material trucks out there. They were using some of that heavy equipment you mentioned. But, as you can imagine, this takes a lot of logistical monitoring on the part of department heads and upper-level staff, as well as the workers who are in the truck.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
If you think about just the work that needs to be done, you're going to have X amount of capacity within the actual equipment and human resources that the city government can bring to bear. But if the challenge exceeds that capacity, then clearly you, the mayor, the commission, have suited up your administration to have the power to go out and do what needs to be done.
Exactly. I'll give you a couple more figures. We had 12 plows, 2 loaders, 2 road graders, 6 skid steers, a snow blower, and other material out there. And, please, again, remind your listeners to bear with us when you're operating that big, heavy equipment and trying to get as many roads plowed as quickly as possible. There are going to be There are going to be occasions when your mailbox is going to get snowed in or the end of your driveway is going to get covered. Please realize it's part of a much, much bigger process. And
So our guest is Mayor Susan Adamchak. She's sharing with us all of the things that have been involved with helping to clear the streets and making sure that motorists are safe. A lot of work on behalf of a lot of different people. Give us, as a final question, Madam Mayor, give us a sense of just where we are in the chronology. I know that there's a lot of work that's been done. Clearly there's more to be done. Do you have a ballpark sense of what the next 2 or 3 days will look like?
I think we're in pretty good shape. The fact that the wind hasn't been terrible the last few days, and that we've had that slight warming, made it messy but easy to move. That initial layer of ice that was on the ground has melted into slush in a lot of places. I want to warn people, these are still dangerous conditions. I was coming home after dark last night and felt the need to drive at a very moderate rate. It was, I could see that things were starting to ice up again. So I would just urge people to be smart, stay safe. These roads may have hidden patches of black ice. Dial it back a little bit on your speed for the next few days.
Good advice from our Mayor, Susan Adamchak. Mayor, we appreciate your willingness to join us today, and please, on behalf of all of those of us who are served by you and the city crews, extend our thanks and our gratitude for their hard work. Clearly, they've gone above and beyond, and we're grateful for that service. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Our promos on Within Reason say that we dig deeper into community conversations and societal trends. There's no shortage of either. Our goal on this program is to not only connect the dots on conversations related to politics, community concerns, but also to help people understand exactly what's going on today when there are challenges like snowfall and blizzards, which happen in January in Kansas. Next week, we hope you'll join us. We've got a pretty good lineup of guests. Emily Wagner with Manhattan Emergency Shelter will join us on Monday, and we'll talk about homelessness in our community. Kevin Bryant and Susanna Gleemore with the local Martin Luther King Jr. Day Committee will join us on Tuesday. We'll talk not only about what's coming up with respect to the MLK Jr. Day celebrations, but we'll also get into race relations in our region. Also next week, Gina Snyder with Downtown Manhattan. She'll talk about what it means to be a mom-and-pop merchant on Main Street these days and how they are surviving and thriving. Katie Pawlowski and Jason Walker with MBAF will join us on Thursday. This is Within Reason on KMAN.
Join us